Hello, and welcome to Spotlight On, the podcast that brings together business leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts covering a range of topics. I'm Nicholas Barton, founder and CEO of the Barton Partnership. We're an award-winning executive recruitment and consulting solutions firm providing permanent search and independent consulting services across strategy, sustainability and M&A, data and analytics, and transformation and change.
Today I'm talking to Tanvi Davda, who's the co-founder and former managing partner for Saranac Partners. Tanvi has over 25 years of experience within financial services. Prior to starting with Saranac Partners, she was a managing director and chief operating officer for the Global Investment and Solutions Division for Barclays Wealth and a member of the Barclays Wealth Operating Committee. She is a trustee at Cheltenham Ladies College, her alma mater, and was a non-executive director for the Student Loans Company and a board member of Ofqual. Tanvi holds a Master's in Finance from London Business School and a BSc in Chemistry from the University of London.
So Tanvi, great to see you today. Thanks for joining. Let's crack into the first question. Can you start by telling us about your career journey and led you to where you are today, please?
Sure. Thanks, Nick, for having me today. So I've had a sort of fairly eclectic and sort of wide-ranging career, but all within the financial services arena. So I started my career actually as a derivatives trader at Credit Suisse, where I was in London for a few years before I actually moved to Singapore. And then one of the things I realised during my time there is that I knew nothing about finance. I'd read chemistry at university, and so felt that I needed to go back to school to get a grounding in finance. And so I moved back to London and joined London Business School on their Masters in Finance programme, which, by the way, is truly fantastic.
Right.
And then did what many people do when they go to business school, having thought about, what they're doing, is actually sort of switched to go into management consulting. So I joined IBM, which was setting up a sort of relatively new consulting practice, and joined their sort of trading and risk practice. So I was very fortunate to be pretty much permanently working during my period at IBM.
Yeah.
And I had an opportunity to live and work in a variety of different countries, actually. So I spent some time in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Switzerland, and in Turkey, working for a variety of institutions, mainly big banks, but helping them across their sort of trading and risk divisions, whether it was setting up a new asset gathering business in Switzerland,
Right.
And doing the sort of passporting and regulatory applications, to looking at how to evaluate different derivatives for risk systems. So very different in nature and experience, but fascinating. But having sort of spent 3 years living out of a suitcase to some extent and traveling an awful lot, I decided I wanted to move back to London and spend some time there. So I joined ABN AMRO, a Dutch bank, and was there for a period of 10 years, which included actually 2 years after it was acquired by the Royal Bank of Scotland. And during those 10 years, I did 6 different roles, ranging from FX strategic sales to debt and equity syndicate in infrastructure finance, to the chief of staff for the CEO of the Americas. So I got to spend 2 years in the US as well,
Amazing.
looking at how to sort of strategically revamp that business. So fascinating period, including the financial crisis, actually, when we were trying to merge the two institutions of ABN AMRO and RBS.
Yeah.
So pretty hectic period. But post the financial crisis, I decided that actually capital markets was going through a sort of an upheaval, and there was an opportunity for me to move to Barclays Wealth. Barclays Wealth was going through a sort of growth journey. It was seeking to be a top 10 wealth manager and was recruiting people to come and help them on that journey. And so I joined Barclays Wealth, firstly as the chief operating officer for our trust, tax and insurance business,
Yeah.
And later became the COO for the investments business, and then actually led the strategy to bring both of those product divisions together along with our asset management business to serve all our client lines. So everyone from sort of retail clients all the way through to ultra high net worth clients. So after 5 years at Barclays Wealth, learning about the wealth and asset management industry, actually 4 of us decided that there was an opportunity to create a boutique focus on the ultra high net worth community. So the ultra high net worth community really want bespoke solutions and advice around how to set their affairs up, be it across sort of public or private markets. And so we set out to build that business called Saranac Partners. And we cater to ultra high net worth individuals and families across the world, but are based in London. So we started that business in 2015 with a blank sheet of paper.
Where did the name come from, by the way? Who created the name?
So the name comes actually from one of the founding 4.
Right.
Actually has a house in upstate New York on Lake Saranac. So that's sort of where the inspiration for the name came from. The reason we chose the name is actually because we discovered it was an Iroquois word for a constellation of stars. And we loved that concept of being a group of stars
very appropriate
supporting clients, and so that's why we settled on the name. But that was the inspiration and the reason for the name.
I like that. Good.
So in 2015 we set the business up. We did it from a blank sheet of paper, and we grew it over the following 6 years to be a business with 50 people and over 100 clients across UK, Europe, and the Middle East.
And so that shift from the various roles that you talked about through your time at Barclays Wealth, etc., into that sort of now startup co-founding role, how did you find that shift? Sort of starting, as you say, with a blank sheet of paper, coming out of an environment where you would have everything around you at your disposal to leverage to support you with developing a business, to actually no support whatsoever and having to do things on your own. How did you find that challenge?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. It's quite a big difference. As you say, when you're at a big corporate institution and you're reasonably senior as a managing director in our product and services division, you have a team of people around you to support you, and you have many more people that you can call upon for their advice and their expertise. When you start a business, you have none of that. So you have to figure things out, things that you've never thought about before, and things that you don't know how to do. And you have to really roll your sleeves up and, get working on things. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't do it, it won't get done. Yeah. So it really tests all of those skills about, are you creative? Can you figure something out? Are you a problem solver? Can you multitask? And, drives you in a completely different way to, the way it is for a corporate leader, essentially. And it's quite all consuming, as you probably can attest to, right, as an entrepreneur yourself. But it's a huge privilege. It's a huge privilege to be able to start a business from a blank sheet of paper, to build things the way you really want them to be done, whether that's getting the people that you rate and the talent that you want, to creating the right culture, to building the infrastructure that you want to embrace and works and supports you, to designing the processes, to delivering. And working with the clients and people that really inspire you and that you want to work with. So it's, as I say, it's a huge privilege to do so. It requires you to work really hard, to hold your nerve, and to really keep core to your values. But it is a truly fantastic experience and a huge learning curve, irrespective of when you do it in your career.
Brilliant. So you've been in financial services for more than 25 years now. Can you share some of your observations of rising to senior leadership positions in the various roles that you've had in what has obviously been typically a very male-dominated industry? And I guess in part, have you noted differences? Because you've also in that time worked in 7 different countries. Have you noted cultural differences, also your ability to progress in the different roles that you've had as well?
Yeah, so in terms of some observations of working in a sort of typically male-dominated industry, a couple of things sort of come to mind. The first is it's really important to be yourself, to be authentic, to be clear around who you are and what your values are. That is a really important thing, actually, irrespective of whether you're a male or a female. But I just think it's a really important thing, particularly as a woman. Many of us suffer from imposter syndrome, but part of that is actually being clear about who you are and what you believe in. The second thing that I think is really important is about taking risk, actually operating outside of your comfort zone, doing things that stretch you, that actually you don't necessarily feel 100% confident in, because those things will help you grow and develop and give you different experiences, which will be incredibly important in thinking about what else you can do with your career. The third is you've got to keep learning from those that are around you and seek guidance and mentorship, because a great mentor can really help you to develop the perspective around what you can achieve and to develop the resilience when it becomes difficult to get there. The reality is that almost no journey I know of anyone has been linear in terms of progression. So where you start isn't necessarily going to be determined where you end up. But if you have a focus on what you want to achieve and you keep thinking about that, then you can sort of get to that position. So I think that's really important in terms of sort of defining that pathway. You won't always know where it's going to lead, but having a sort of sense of where you want to go and what you want to achieve is really important.
What you've just highlighted, I guess, are some of the key tools that people can employ when they're thinking about that. Mm. But clearly, obviously, you're doing that now from a position of experience. If you look back over your career progression, did you face challenges in the industry as a woman trying to progress? Did you feel that there was any sort of challenges around that aspect, or that the path was actually as open to you as it would be to anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone faces challenges. You do face challenges as a woman, partly because you're often the only woman in the ring. There are many, many occasions where I've been the only one and felt like an outsider.
Right.
And that's absolutely true. You are sort of in a position where you are the only one, but actually that has huge value as well. And if you're working with a great team, they recognize that value. So don't be afraid to sort of stand up, to speak out, because actually often that perspective, that difference can be incredibly valuable. And you talked about the experience of working in different countries. And actually that's what it really gives you. If you have an opportunity to live and work in a different country, you get an opportunity to really experience different cultural norms and working practices, and to really immerse yourself in those practices. You have to be able to flex your style to fit other people's culture and ways of working. But you also have an opportunity to bring your own experience and ways of working to an organization, to a country, to a team. And we all know, research has told us many times, that the best teams are those that embrace diversity of perspective. So being part of or running a cross-cultural team makes you embrace that and see the benefit of doing that in a very visceral way.
Yeah.
So, I think that actually helps you in terms of understanding other people's perspective and where they're coming from, and allows you to sort of embrace that diversity.
And you referenced the importance of having a mentor or a coach to assist you on that journey. Can you share about yours? Did you identify someone? How did you identify someone? How should someone think about identifying someone to be that person? What was your experience of that?
So sometimes I was given a mentor. So I was fortunate enough to work in some organizations where, they sort of gave mentors to those that they felt could benefit from them, and part of a number of sort of programs of high potential and those kind of things. And at first, I wasn't really sure how to best use my mentor. What were they there for? Were they there to sort of guide me or to sponsor me, or to make sure that I could get that next promotion? And I realized that a mentor was really a very personal thing. And it allowed you to sort of really think about and reflect on how you can do something, a better way of approaching something, an issue that you're struggling with and want some support on, someone to sort of guide you and to think about what next. And they also challenge you. A good mentor will challenge you to think about, what you're doing, how much you're stretching yourself, what else you can be doing. And that's also, incredibly valuable. There are periods in my life where I've not had a mentor, as it were, and I've gone out to seek one. I've gone to approach someone and said, will you help me? I think I need some help in a specific area or a specific way. And I would really appreciate if you could be that mentor. And I've sort of done that for others as well. And what I found is that actually most people, time, of being available, are really willing to help others. And so don't be afraid to ask for that help and that support. It is really important to getting that sort of additional support and resilience, really, in order to make it through sort of what will undoubtedly be, tricky times, difficult times. And they can be difficult times, not just professionally, but personally as well. If you're, when you have children and you go back to work and thinking about how do you approach that, how do you juggle being a mother and being a working professional? How do you make sure that actually, your voice is heard, but your concerns are also heard? So, all of those things mean that you can struggle at different times. And often people don't know that you're struggling. And so actually asking for help and support before you get to that point is incredibly valuable. So if there's one tip I can give people, it's to get a mentor. If you don't have a mentor, go seek one out.
Brilliant. I mean, beyond that though, in your view, should businesses be doing a lot more, should organisations in your world be doing a lot more to create more diverse workforce and leadership team?
Yeah, absolutely. Things are definitely improving.
Yes.
But we still haven't got to a place where actually our workforce is truly diverse. And I mean diverse in many different ways, whether that's, ethnic diversity, gender diversity, neurodiversity, socioeconomic diversity. I mean, there's many aspects of diversity and we still haven't got there. So it is a work in progress. And for organizations, it is therefore a constant effort. It is not something that you can do 1 year and then not worry about because you've made some progress. It is a constant effort. And you therefore have to be very conscious and very deliberate about what you do. And that sort of starts at the grassroots, right from the sort of beginning of when and how you recruit people, all the way through to getting them to the most senior posts. And so it really does need a sort of different way of thinking and approach in all of those aspects. I'll give you one example. So when I started my career in financial services, there was sort of, I guess, two norms, as it were, when doing, for recruitment. The first was that actually people only really recruited from the top universities, the Russell Group universities here in the UK, but essentially top universities. And they only generally recruited individuals that come from a science, economics, or maths background. So suddenly you are, restricting the number of individuals that you're likely to find that are that diverse. I read chemistry, as I said, and there were very, very few women. So suddenly, if you are going to a university and you're only recruiting, from sciences or maths-based sort of skills, then you are going to only find a small proportion of women there. You might find more ethnic minorities, but you definitely will find less women. So that's what I mean about being very conscious about, what you do. The other thing that is important is to create flexibility, that actually there are pathways for people all the way through. So that even if you start in a career, is that if it gets difficult and challenging, is that you don't have, the only pathway is not to exit. So for companies and organizations to be more flexible with their workforce in terms of whether it's around flexible working, sabbaticals, and different ways of sort of operating to allow people to have the longer career. Companies invest a huge amount in talent. I mean, just an extraordinary amount. To have made that investment and then to lose that talent halfway through is just an incredible waste. And so companies really need to do more to ensure that they're supporting people all the way through those careers. The third thing is about actually showcasing people and showing them, because the reality is if you can't see it, then you don't believe it. And we see that time and time again, whether it's women in senior positions, whether it's people that come from a sort of lower socioeconomic group, sort of not seeing people like them. And that means that companies have to be very thoughtful around who's on the recruitment panel, who are they actually putting in front of people? Because if you can't see the person that you think you are, then you don't believe that that company or that organization or that career is for you, because you can't see yourself in it.
And so what are some of the strategies that can help women achieve more prominent positions in these industries?
So the first is mentorship and sponsorship. And they're not the same thing, but both are required. So mentorship for the individual to be able to support them in their own journey, and having good mentors and encouraging the process of mentorship is really important. But you also need sponsorship. You need people to identify talent and sponsor that talent to get them through the most senior levels. And that is very different. But you need both to be able to succeed. The second thing is, I mentioned this earlier, is about risk taking. So giving people stretch opportunities and opportunities to really test themselves and build their capabilities is really important. And going sort of out of your way to give particularly women, but people an opportunity to do so allows them to really find it within themselves to rise to the challenge. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean creating a glass cliff. So you need to make sure that they are set up for success, but giving them those opportunities will allow them to sort of really discover their own leadership potential and capability. So that's the sort of second thing that I'd say. The third is about flexibility. We've talked about that. I think a more flexible workforce is incredibly valuable. You know, one of the things that we've all learned in the pandemic is actually the flexibility of working for people to be able to spend time with their kids or caring for others, but still being able to do their job. And so we'll be in a period of sort of hybrid working now for some time. But if you'd asked people 3 years ago before the pandemic, most people wouldn't have embraced that in the same way. So the flexibility, I think, is incredibly important. And then finally, there is something about the way that organizations sometimes ask women to do what I describe as the female roles. And what I mean by that is that they're the ones that are asked to buy the gift for their colleague's birthday present. They're the ones that are asked to make the cup of tea. They're the ones that are asked to take the notes in the meeting. And it's really important that actually that isn't, given to women every time, because it sort of positions them as in a certain way. So it's important that that is either shared out or given to a variety of different roles, individuals, but it's really important that women aren't always asked to do those roles, and that everyone sort of pitches in when needing to do those type of things. So those are some of the things that I think about when actually, how do you break the sort of stereotype that exists and give people opportunities to really succeed.
And so I want to come on to this next point, because I think it's a great link in, and we talked about sort of the grassroots challenge as well. You're a non-executive director at Cheltenham Ladies College. Can you share some of the insights into your role there, and not only about moving into that type of NED type role, but have you been able to, I guess, share some of this knowledge to us, to that group during your time as a non-exec there?
Yeah, so one of the things about being an exec is that you're the one that has to make all the decisions. You have to make the difficult calls, the judgments. As a non-exec, you actually need to be there as a supporting act. You are there to, yes, hold the executive accountable to the shareholders or the regulator, but you are much more there to be a group that can provide perspective, advice, guidance, and really lean in when needed. I know from having had my own board how valued that can be if used appropriately. And I was really fortunate enough to have NED roles sort of quite early on in my career. I was a non-exec director for the student loans company for many years, and then for Ofqual in its early formation. And this sort of really allowed me to develop my skills of listening, of guiding, of providing impartial advice. And, doing that early on helped me both be a better executive, and also gave me the skills to understand how I needed to leverage my own board in times of need when I was an executive. So I think, that's a really important lesson. And again, I'd urge people to sort of seek out non-executive opportunities. Many are pro bono at the beginning, but they're all fantastic opportunities to get an insight into how boards work and to really help you sort of gauge those skills. And one of the things that you get to see is just the pressure of running a school during the pandemic. Running a business is very difficult during the pandemic. Every leader will attest to that, as I'm sure will you, Nick. But running a school, I mean, they have really had some challenging times. And so, again, it's been a real privilege to be able to support both the staff and the girls at Cheltenham Ladies College in terms of that journey. We all know that people are burnt out, that are dealing with the uncertain times of exams, of how things are going to be able to work. Your boarding school, will you be able to go home and see your family? Those are really very real concerns for schools, and being able to continue to provide the best education that they can. But one of the things that's been really heartening to see is, again, just how people have stepped up to the challenge, about how they have built resilience, about how they have come together as a community, about how they have supported each other, not only within the school, but within the environment in which they live and go to school as well. And that's truly fantastic to see. You've seen great creativity and great inspiration from people. And those are all the skills that you need as you develop. So whilst, it has not been an easy journey, actually it has made everyone a lot stronger, a lot more creative, and a lot more sense of community in this period. And those are all incredibly valuable as, young girls and young women seek to make their way in life and determine their own careers and futures as they move forward.
Brilliant. Finally, what advice then would you give the next generation of women starting out in their careers?
Oh, well, let's see. The first is don't be afraid. It is an unknown path, but don't be afraid of it. Embrace it. The second is it'll be hard. There will be really difficult moments along this journey, but don't let that put you off. You can achieve it if you put your mind to it. So be relentless in your pursuit of what you want to achieve. Believe in yourself, because if you don't, other people won't. And then two really valuable lessons that actually I've learned along the way. The first is to create a great support system. You're going to need that support system, whether that's through friends, family, colleagues. Build a great support system that can carry you and help you and support you in the good times and the bad. And then, I guess finally, one of the things that, often we tell young girls and young people is that they can do anything. And it is true. You can do anything. But what you cannot do is do everything.
Yeah.
So you need to be thoughtful and you need to be patient, but you can do anything, but you need to be quite thoughtful about what you want to achieve. So don't try and do everything, but you can do anything.
Wow. What a brilliant way to finish. Tanvi, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. It's been a fantastic conversation and really sort of some genuine insight there into your career and what an amazing career you've had so far. And it's certainly by no means over. But also life as a woman in an industry that's, as you said, been typically male dominated and how you progressed in that. Great to see you. Thank you for your time. And thank you for those that have listened today as well.
Thanks so much, Nick. Thanks very much for having me today.